I never imagined a single moment at the beach could shatter everything I thought I knew about our relationship. But there I was, standing under the scorching sun, my heart pounding, as Sam smirked at me and said loud enough for everyone around to hear, "If you're jealous, go home." I froze. The words echoed, not just across the sand, but inside me, reverberating through years of trust and care I'd poured into this relationship. My hand tightened around the sunscreen bottle, the one he'd casually handed me, unaware that every motion of his that day felt like a test I hadn't agreed to take. I looked at him, the man I'd loved for 2 years, thinking we balanced each other out, and realized that maybe I had been blind. Sam, with his effortless charm and endless confidence, thrived on attention, and I had always accepted it, believing our love was strong enough to withstand it. But now, standing there as he flaunted control over me, I knew things had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I said nothing, simply, "Okay," and walked away. I locked the credit card he'd been secretly using for expenses I didn't authorize and let the resort handle the $2,000 bill he couldn't cover. The real shock wasn't the money. It was the revelation that I, Emily, would actually walk away from a vacation, from someone I loved, in the middle of it all. Back in my Denver apartment now, silence surrounds me. The calm contrasts with the storm of emotions I still carry: betrayal, disbelief, and a strange, liberating sense of clarity. Sam is at a San Diego resort, still oblivious to the depth of what he's lost. And as I replay every interaction, every calculated joke and sly glance, I wonder, did I overreact, or did I finally see him for who he really was? This wasn't just about sunscreen, it was about boundaries, respect, and the realization that sometimes leaving is the only way to claim your own peace. For the first time in a long time, I felt it. The quiet, powerful liberation of walking away from chaos. I'm Emily, 29, a financial risk analyst in Denver, grounded, logical, and fiercely independent. Sam is 31, a lifestyle and fitness influencer with a magnetic charm that drew me in from the moment we met at a mutual friend's launch party 2 years ago. Back then, his laugh was infectious, his energy contagious. I was reserved, analytical, cautious. He was spontaneous, bold, and unapologetically visible. Somehow we clicked. The early months felt effortless. We spent weekends exploring the city, late-night drives with the radio blaring, quiet moments on rooftops watching sunsets. Sam had a way of making everything feel alive, even the mundane errands. He introduced me to his world of events, brand launches, and social circles filled with influencers. I tried to embrace it because I loved him, and I wanted to understand the life that energized him so completely. But cracks appeared, subtle at first. The lingering glances at other women, the playful banter that seemed harmless, yet made me uncomfortable. When I brought it up, he laughed it off. "You're just insecure," he'd say, brushing my words away. Sometimes I'd think I was overreacting. Other times, I'd catch myself analyzing his every interaction, measuring the tone of his messages, counting likes on social media, questioning if I was enough. My relationship with his family was complicated. His parents were charming on the surface, but judgmental beneath. I always felt like I had to prove myself, navigate their subtle critiques while maintaining a cheerful exterior. Birthdays, holidays, dinners, every event was a test I didn't sign up for. Yet I endured because love made me patient, because I believed in the life we were building together. Over time, I became attuned to the patterns, the way he smiled at certain friends a little too long, the way he dismissed my boundaries casually, almost jokingly, as if testing me. I rationalized it as harmless attention, convinced I could balance it with my own assertiveness. I told myself I wasn't controlling, just aware, just protective of what we had. And he thrived on the fact that I stayed calm, that I tolerated small slights, that I didn't walk away. By the time the La Jolla resort trip came around, I thought I knew him. I thought I could handle his world, understand his charm, and witness the dynamics of his life without losing myself. I wanted to see how he interacted when everyone around him admired, envied, or flirted with him. I wanted to feel secure, but little did I know, this trip would unravel everything I thought I understood. The foundation we had built, the love, the shared laughs, the quiet trust, was about to be tested in ways I never imagined, and I would soon learn that love, even when genuine, cannot survive where respect is absent. From the very first evening at La Jolla, there was a subtle tension in the air I couldn't ignore. Sam had invited me to join him and a few influencer friends for a long weekend at the resort, claiming it was good for me to see his world. I agreed, thinking it would be harmless, even enlightening. But as soon as we arrived, I noticed the little things, glances that lingered, touches on arms that seemed unnecessary, laughter a touch too loud at private jokes. His friend Tyler stood out immediately. Introduced as a coworker for a brand collaboration, he was polite, friendly, but his eyes seemed glued to Sam in a way that made my stomach tighten. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was reading too much into it. Sam's friends were typical influencers, glamorous, performative, and constantly documenting everything. I watched him laugh, pose, and interact with them, feeling a strange mix of admiration and unease. The next morning, at the private beach section the resort had arranged, the tension became almost tangible. Sam was in his element, laughing, taking photos, showing off for everyone. I sat nearby, sunscreen in hand, tasked with helping him, feeling more like an accessory than a partner. Then it happened. A tour guide, Aiden, a young man with a smile that immediately drew Sam's attention, walked past. In seconds, Sam's attention shifted. He called out to Aiden, laughed a little too loud, leaned in. "Hey, can you help me with something?" His back turned to me. He asked for help with sunscreen. The absurdity of it, asking me, holding the bottle while he made a scene, hit me with the force of betrayal. Tyler looked down at his phone, pretending not to notice. Sam's friends went silent, sensing the shift. My heart pounded, my palms sweaty. I felt that familiar knot of doubt, insecurity, and rising anger I had learned to suppress over the years. The unease wasn't just in the moment. It was the accumulation of months of subtle tests, of boundaries pushed and dismissed. And yet, I didn't yell. I didn't confront. I simply stood, nodded, and walked away. That choice, calm on the surface, masked a storm brewing inside me. I began replaying every past incident in my mind. The lingering touches, the flirtatious jokes, the way he dismissed my discomfort as overreaction. Each memory now seemed like a seed planted, growing silently, until it became a tangled web of mistrust and doubt. By the end of that day, I felt a shift in myself. Something inside had changed. The quiet discomfort that had accompanied our relationship for months crystallized into awareness. I realized that what I had long considered harmless behavior was, in fact, a repeated testing of my patience, my boundaries, and my very willingness to accept disrespect. That evening, as Sam laughed with friends under the warm glow of sunset, I felt the first real tremor of clarity. I could no longer ignore the signs. The conflict had been quietly seeding itself all along, and now I knew it was about to bloom. Friday morning at La Jolla started like any other influencer beach day. Golden sun, waves lapping at the shore, everyone smiling for cameras. But it quickly became the moment that shattered the fragile trust I had clung to for months. Sam was laughing, performing for his friends, holding court like a king among his entourage. I sat there, sunscreen bottle in hand, feeling like an observer in my own life. Then it happened. Aiden, the tour guide, wandered close to our group again. Sam called him over, this time with a laugh that carried across the sand. I could see it in his eyes, attention, admiration, and something flirtatious. He leaned close, hands gesturing, smiling in a way that made my skin crawl. "Can you get my back with sunscreen? My girlfriend gets weirdly jealous about this stuff." The words cut through me like ice. I was literally holding the bottle, yet he framed it as if I were the problem. I froze, my chest tight, breath shallow. The heat of the sun seemed to mirror the flush of anger and humiliation rising in me. Sam looked at me briefly, a smirk tugging at his lips, then back to Aiden as if nothing was wrong. Around us, his friends glanced nervously, sensing the tension. Tyler's phone was down again, eyes avoiding mine, a silent acknowledgement that something was off. I didn't scream. I didn't confront immediately. I simply said, "Okay," and walked away toward the resort. Every step felt heavy, my mind racing. How could the person I trusted most, the one I loved, treat me this way publicly, deliberately, knowing the humiliation I'd feel. My fingers tightened on the straps of my bag, nails digging into my palms, grounding me as I processed the betrayal. Back in our room, the hotel bill waiting for us under the door caught my attention. Scanning it, my eyes widened. Charges I hadn't authorized, spa packages, room upgrades, private consultations, all linked to a credit card Sam had access to. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just the public humiliation. It was the calculated use of my resources, the quiet manipulation, the sense that everything he did was engineered to keep me compliant and off balance. I called the front desk, had them lock the card, and started packing. The weight of realization pressed down on me. This wasn't just a bad joke or playful flirting. This was months of testing boundaries, of assuming I would always absorb disrespect, of manipulating trust for his amusement. Sam's texts began pouring in, confused, then angry, then desperate. If you walk out over this, don't bother coming back. I ignored them. My silence was intentional. For the first time in a long time, I prioritized my own dignity, my own sense of self-worth, over his ego. That moment, the beach, the smirk, the bill, the texts, was the inciting incident. It crystallized everything I had been feeling and fearing, forcing me to confront the truth I had long tried to rationalize away. I wasn't overreacting. I was awake. And from that instant, nothing would ever be the same. Sitting alone in the resort room, suitcase half packed, I felt a storm raging inside me. My chest was tight, my heart beating in erratic, jagged rhythms. I ran my hands over my face, trying to calm the surge of disbelief, betrayal, and anger. How had I missed the signs for so long? How had I allowed someone I loved to systematically erode my boundaries without noticing until now? I thought back over the past 2 years. Every moment I had brushed off discomfort, every time I rationalized his flirtations, every time I laughed off what should have been a red flag. I asked myself over and over, did I ignore the truth? Was I too passive? Did I let him test me because I didn't think I deserved better? My mind refused to rest. I pictured Sam laughing on the beach, speaking to Aiden, the subtle calculations in his behavior, the casual use of my credit card. It wasn't just disrespect, it was manipulation. And yet the human part of me still wrestled with love, with the memories of quiet mornings, whispered confessions, and laughter shared in hotel lobbies and late-night drives. I remembered the first time I met his mother at a family dinner. The smiles had been warm, but the undertones of judgment had been unmistakable. "Is she really serious about you?" the look said, unspoken yet sharp. I had tried to navigate it, to remain patient and respectful, thinking it was my role to prove my worth. Perhaps that had fed into Sam's assumption that I would tolerate anything, that I would never walk away. Tears pricked my eyes as I considered the confrontation that could have happened. I could imagine yelling, crying, demanding apologies, trying to fix him or the relationship. But a quieter, stronger part of me refused. No, not this time. I would not be complicit in my own degradation. I would not justify his behavior for the sake of maintaining peace or avoiding conflict. So I stayed silent, methodically packing, grounding myself in the tangible facts, the unauthorized charges, the public humiliation, the manipulations I now saw clearly. Each detail added weight to the decision forming in my mind. I didn't feel victorious yet. I felt betrayed, angry, and small. But within that discomfort, a spark of empowerment flickered. I had the clarity to choose myself. Before leaving, I confronted Sam briefly. Calmly, without hysteria, I said, "I'm leaving. I'll handle the bills you ran up. Don't contact me until you're ready to acknowledge what happened." His shock was evident. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the man I thought I knew. But this wasn't about him anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my boundaries, my sense of self. Walking out of that room, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. Freedom. Not freedom from love, but freedom from manipulation, from disrespect, from the silent erosion of my worth. The reaction wasn't just about anger. It was the first step in taking back control of my life. The days after leaving La Jolla were surreal. Back in my Denver apartment, silence replaced the chaos. Yet the storm from the resort followed me in waves. Text notifications, emails, and the gnawing realization of just how much Sam had manipulated me. Each message he sent was a reminder of his disbelief, his anger, and his desperate attempts to reclaim control over me. "Emily, please, you're overreacting. I was joking. Come back." I read them and felt my stomach twist, knowing he truly didn't understand the gravity of his actions. Then came Emily, one of Sam's friends from the trip. She reached out privately, cautiously, almost hesitantly. Her message shook me. She had screenshots from a group chat where Sam had boasted about my supposed passivity, about how he could push my buttons endlessly and I would never leave. "He thinks you're too logical to ever act," one message read. My chest tightened as I realized this was not about a joke at the beach. This was calculated. Every flirtatious remark, every casual humiliation, every misuse of my card had been a test, a way to measure how far he could push me without consequence. The escalation didn't stop there. Tyler, the coworker Sam had been manipulating, reached out to me as well. His confession was disarming. Over the past 2 months, Sam had been subtly setting up his exit strategy, leading Tyler to believe our relationship was practically over, that I was more of a roommate than a girlfriend. Tyler had distanced himself once he realized I was unaware of any of this, but the damage was done. Sam had built a scenario where he maintained control while exploring other options. Meanwhile, the resort billing issue spiraled. Additional charges appeared: a yacht photo shoot, luxury wellness packages, and upgraded room services, all billed under my credit card without consent. I had to formally contact the resort, forwarding all responsibility to Sam. When he called, voice trembling with a mix of outrage and panic, I remained calm, letting the reality of his actions hang between us. Every attempt at persuasion, apology, or manipulation failed, because I no longer allowed him access to my boundaries. Friends and followers added another layer to the chaos. Social media buzzed with videos from the resort, clips of Sam's meltdown, his futile attempts to explain himself, and his desperate messages leaked into wider circles. Emily kept me updated on the fallout, how Sam's carefully curated image was unraveling, how friends who once cheered him on began questioning his integrity. Even the influencer world, notorious for glossing over missteps, couldn't ignore the pattern of manipulation he had displayed. Inside me, a shift was taking place. The quiet fire that had flickered during the beach incident now roared. I felt a profound sense of clarity. Sam had overstepped repeatedly, and I had finally recognized the cumulative harm of his behavior. I was no longer reacting impulsively. I was observing, understanding, and reclaiming control. By the end of that week, the escalation had reached its peak. Every text, every social media post, every revelation reinforced a truth I could no longer deny. I would not return to a relationship built on manipulation, testing, and disrespect. The power dynamic had shifted, and I was the one standing firm, calm, and resolute amidst the chaos Sam had created. Despite the clarity I had gained, a shadow settled over me. Sitting in my apartment, surrounded by quiet that once felt like relief, I now felt the weight of isolation pressing down. The adrenaline of confrontation, of walking away, had faded, leaving only the raw ache of loneliness. For 2 years, my life had intertwined with Sam's, shared meals, inside jokes, dreams whispered in the dark, and now it was gone. I scrolled through my phone, hesitant, heart heavy. His messages piled up: confusion, anger, despair, pleading. Each notification stabbed at the resolve I had fought so hard to maintain. I wanted to respond, to justify my actions, to reach back into the familiar comfort of connection. But I couldn't. I had learned, painfully, that engagement only reinforced the pattern of manipulation. Memories clung to me like shadows. I saw us on long drives through mountain passes, laughing until our sides ached. I saw the quiet evenings spent planning our future. I saw the warmth in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Each memory cut deeper now, not with betrayal, but with grief. A mourning for the person I thought I knew and the love I believed was mutual. The social fallout intensified my despair. Clips from the resort went viral within small circles, showing Sam's frantic attempts to manage the bills, his excuses, and his indignation. Friends who had been close drifted away, unsure how to navigate the truth of the situation. Even those who supported me could not fill the hollow ache of having trusted someone so completely, only to be deceived. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel truly small. My confidence, the sense of self I had built around patience and understanding, seemed fragile, almost brittle. I questioned myself endlessly. Did I misjudge him? Did I overreact? Could I have saved us? The answers offered no comfort. The quiet apartment echoed with my racing thoughts, and sleep became elusive, filled with dreams of confrontation and recrimination. Yet, amid the darkness, there was a flicker. A stubborn, quiet ember of self-respect refused to die. I realized that this pain, this deep sense of betrayal and isolation, was not a punishment. It was a turning point. I was at rock bottom, yes, but rock bottom was also the foundation on which I would rebuild. I was alone, but I was free. Alone, yet capable. And for the first time, I understood that sometimes the most profound strength comes from facing the darkest moments and refusing to let them define you. It wasn't a grand revelation that pulled me out of the dark. It was a series of small, undeniable truths that finally aligned into clarity. The first came from Emily, Sam's friend. Her messages were blunt but kind, exposing the reality I had been unwilling to fully acknowledge. Sam had been deliberately testing me, manipulating me, and quietly setting up other options while keeping me tethered to him for comfort and convenience. Then Tyler reached out. His words cut through the lingering fog of self-doubt. He confirmed that Sam had told him our relationship was effectively over, painting me as a passive observer, a roommate more than a partner. Tyler's honesty was unexpected and almost painful, yet it was the validation I needed. It confirmed that the patterns I had dismissed were not my fault. They were part of a calculated design I had been blind to. I began to see the bigger picture, the accumulation of minor humiliations, the casual dismissals, the public jokes, the unauthorized use of my card. The beach incident had been the trigger, but the cause was years of consistent boundary violations. And suddenly I understood. I had been patient, considerate, and loving. But patience in the face of deliberate disrespect is not virtue. It is vulnerability exploited. With this understanding came a powerful sense of control. I realized that I had choices. I could continue to be drawn back into chaos, weighed down by guilt or nostalgia. Or I could step away, firmly, decisively, and reclaim my life on my own terms. I chose the latter. That afternoon, I called the resort to confirm the charges were properly redirected to Sam. I didn't need confrontation. I needed closure, practical and final. Each phone call, each email, each affirmation of boundaries reinforced my strength. I wasn't weak for leaving. I was wise. I wasn't abandoning love. I was protecting my worth. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace, not the passive peace of avoidance, but an active peace born of clarity, boundaries, and self-respect. I was no longer reacting to Sam's chaos. I was observing, controlling, and prioritizing myself. And then, unexpectedly, a quiet excitement crept in. The freedom I had feared, freedom from manipulation, games, and disrespect, was energizing. I began reconnecting with old friends, pursuing hobbies I had set aside, and rediscovering parts of myself I had neglected. The darkness had brought me to rock bottom, yes, but it had also prepared me to rise, to see clearly, and to act decisively. This turning point wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was intimate, internal, and irreversible. I had learned the hard way that self-respect is not negotiable, that boundaries are not optional, and that sometimes walking away is the most powerful act of love one can offer themselves. The days that followed were almost surreal in their unfolding. Sam's carefully constructed world began to unravel, not because of any revenge I sought, but simply because truth has a way of surfacing when boundaries are finally enforced. His public persona, the charming, confident influencer adored by followers, started to crack. Clips from La Jolla showing him in panic over unpaid charges circulated quietly at first, then more widely, and a small storm of gossip and commentary erupted across social media. Friends and colleagues who had once cheered him on began distancing themselves. Emily, while loyal to me, also highlighted how Sam's friends had seen the calculated behavior and manipulations all along, and yet he had expected compliance. The more I heard from her, the more I realized how isolated he had allowed himself to become. His ego, once inflated by attention and perceived control, was now exposed as fragile and brittle. Meanwhile, Sam's attempts to contact me became increasingly desperate and transparent. Calls, emails, texts, each one revealing panic rather than remorse. But I stayed firm. I did not respond. Each attempt from him reminded me why I had chosen to leave, why I had acted to protect my dignity. In not engaging, I allowed him to confront the consequences of his own actions, unfiltered by my presence or intervention. Social media amplified the fallout. Videos of his meltdown at the resort, once funny in a harmless sense, became emblematic of his recklessness. Screenshots of his messages and admissions from Tyler circulated in private circles, slowly leaking into public feeds. Sam's image, meticulously curated over years, took visible hits. Brands, influencers, even casual followers began questioning his character and credibility. Through it all, I felt a strange mixture of relief and detachment. I was no longer ensnared by his manipulations. I was free to live my life without constantly bracing for the next calculated slight or public humiliation. I focused on reconnecting with friends I had neglected, reviving hobbies I had shelved, and enjoying quiet, restorative moments that had been impossible while I was entangled in the storm of Sam's games. The most powerful fallout was internal. I realized that leaving did not just remove me from his chaos. It restored my own voice, my confidence, and my ability to assert boundaries without fear of repercussion. The fallout, while visibly damaging to Sam, was more importantly a rebirth of my agency. I had walked away from manipulation, and in doing so, had taken the first true steps toward living a life grounded in self-respect, clarity, and calm. No revenge was necessary, no confrontation awaited. The truth, the consequences of his choices, and the quiet reclaiming of my life were enough. Sam would face the realities he had chosen to ignore, and I would continue to grow, undistracted by the chaos he left behind. Weeks passed, and with each day the sharp edges of the chaos dulled. I woke up without dread, checked my phone without anxiety, and breathed without holding back. The quiet that once felt heavy now felt liberating. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, discovered a profound kind of peace. Not the absence of challenges, but the presence of clarity, self-respect, and resilience. I began reconnecting with parts of myself I had neglected, morning runs through quiet streets, reading books I had set aside, long phone calls with friends whose voices reminded me of grounding and honesty. Every small act of self-care became a declaration. I mattered, my boundaries mattered, and my life was mine to shape. Then, unexpectedly, new energy entered my world. I met Mia through a mutual friend at a dinner party. Calm, deliberate, and genuine, she was the opposite of the storm I had just left behind. Our conversations flowed without games, without testing, without performance. When I shared the story of Sam, briefly, honestly, she listened. No judgment, no assumptions, just understanding. That in itself was healing. I reflected on what I had learned, and the lessons were clear. Love is not measured by how much chaos you tolerate, or how much you bend to accommodate someone else's whims. Respect is not optional, it is fundamental. Boundaries are not obstacles to affection. They are the pillars that support it, and perhaps most importantly, walking away is not weakness. It is courage, and often it is the first step toward reclaiming your own life. Sam's world had crumbled quietly, a consequence of his own choices. I did not need to intervene, nor did I feel satisfaction in his discomfort. What mattered was that I had chosen sanity, dignity, and authenticity. I had learned that peace is not about pleasing others or avoiding conflict. It is about protecting your own well-being and refusing to tolerate what diminishes you. As I sipped my coffee one morning, sunlight spilling across my apartment, I realized something profound. The calm, the quiet, the restored sense of self. It was more rewarding than any drama, any confrontation, or any attempt at control. Life had returned, not as a whirlwind of manipulation, but as a space where I could breathe, grow, and thrive. The final lesson I carry is simple yet powerful. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Stand firm in your worth, even when it feels easier to compromise. The world may not always understand your choices, but your peace, your clarity, and your self-respect are worth every difficult decision, every painful step, and every quiet moment of courage. I am Emily now, standing in my own life, fully present, fully respected, and finally free.